So my name is Michelle, and I am a Director of Education in the School of Biological Sciences. And I'm going to tell you a bit about our assessment diversity. And I'm going to tell you a bit about the context of our school first, and then talk about what I mean when I say diversity of assessments, and why we do it and how we do it, and then what are some of the issues that arise, sort of the so what questions. So first, for context, in Aberdeen, we deliver 10 different programs in biological sciences. We're in a school that is separate from medical sciences, so our programs are really oriented more on an organismal level than non-human organisms. We do have a program that has a molecular focus, but most of our programs don't have a molecular focus. In Scotland, you may know we have 4-year undergraduate programs. These are BSc honors programs. And the structure of the academic year involves students taking 8 15-credit courses. And for each of these programs, there'll be some compulsory courses, but a number of optional courses. And so our students in the honors years, in years 3 and 4, they're tending to choose courses mainly within our own school, even though they have the choice outside of the school for their options. Why that's relevant, well, I'll come back to that a little bit later in the talk. So we have an assessment strategy in Aberdeen, as most of the universities will, and it's based on the UK Quality Code, and so there's a number of different things that inform how we construct our portfolio of assessments for our students. And having some diversity is just one of those things that we consider when we're trying to put together the portfolio. So what am I talking about when I say we have diversity of assessments? Well, we do run a number of very traditional assessments that would be essay-based exams or exams looking at MCQ questions or short answer questions. Those exams tend to be in our first 2 years of the programs. We don't use them very much anymore in the honors years, but we still do use some. We also use tests as a way to assess our practical activities. So, for example, in our first year Frontiers course, students are undertaking a practical looking at carbon assimilation in C3 and C4 plants, and they would follow that practical with a test, some questions about that. Students in our practicals are also writing up what you would expect to be a typical lab report. So that's part of what our students do in years 1 and 2. Our exams in the second year are starting to be a bit more based on problem solving. We have some really nice examples, I think, in our conservation and our ecology courses where students are given data or scenarios that they have to interpret in the exam in order to explain to us the concepts that underpin those scenarios. So it's really an application of what they've been learning. We also have a number of assessments that are really focused on strengthening students' skills, whether those be communication skills or whether they be quantitative skills or something that you might describe as technical or professional skills. And there's a range of examples that are listed on the screen here, but to give you some specific examples, in our first year course again, students are learning to use image analysis software by working with images of dolphin fins that come from our research group based up at the Moray Firth. So they're applying that technology and learning that in the first year to answer some questions in relation to dolphin identities. We also have a number of field courses that we run. In almost all of our field courses, students are working and producing field notebooks. In some of our lab courses, they also produce lab notebooks. But again, that's sort of an assessment that we use to try and develop that skill amongst our students. We have a number of different types of oral presentations for our students. They do pechakuchas in the 3rd year. They do recorded 3-minute thesis talks in our 4th year. So we try and have a variety of different types of oral presentations for our students as well. Then we have a number of assessments that I would describe as authentic, being relevant to the workplace that our students would be mainly looking at after the graduation. And those would be probably in the honors years, less common in the 1st or 2nd years. But there are things like policy briefs and environmental impact assessments. Students write scoping reports. They do habitat maps as part of one of our field courses in the 3rd year. So it's really a lot of application of what they're learning in the classroom. Some examples are on the bottom of the screen. Students write a management plan for a species of conservation interest. We have a course where students are going into local schools and they're teaching, and so one of the parts of the assessments is actually their practice of teaching in the classroom that's done by the teacher themselves. And a couple other examples here for you. So why do we do this? Well, our courses or the programs have a diverse set of outcomes for our students, and so by having a diverse set of assessments, we can evidence their achievements of that diversity of outcomes. We also recognize that our learners are quite diverse and they perform differently on different kinds of assessments. Now, some are very good at written assessments, some are very good at oral, some are very good at open creative assessments. So by having diversity, it gives all the students a chance, hopefully, to excel in what they're doing. And another motivation for this, I think, is that it encourages adaptability and flexibility among students. Students are reluctant to do something they haven't done before. They develop some anxiety around that, but by encouraging students to take the skills they have from one type of assessment and apply it in a different context, I think we can help to build that flexibility and comfort with the unknown, as it were. So how do we go about doing this? Well, in relation to supporting the students, we try and do a lot of scaffolding. We prepare them across different modules to be able to address these new kinds of assessments that they haven't seen before, but also we provide some scaffolding within courses. We try and incorporate some formative exercises or formative assessments so students have an awareness of what the expectations are for some of these unusual assessments that they might face. And then, of course, we have to provide the students with really clear guidelines and marking rubrics so that they, again, can be very clear on what the expectations are. In relation to developing and reviewing and revising these assessments, there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done by staff. So a lot of the assessments that we've come up with, of course, have been developed by staff themselves. Our staff have really enjoyed creating these innovative assessments, and so that's something that's driving this forward. We use the feedback from the students to sort of correct mistakes that we make, but also to encourage us to continue with this diversity. Students really appreciate having a chance to have a diversity of assessments. We have a program advisory board that also gives us some guidance in terms of where the gaps are in what we're doing in terms of our provision and our assessments. And then one of my jobs as a director of education is to work with staff to try and be sure that we're coordinating across the different modules within a year and also coordinating across modules within a program so that we don't end up with something really higgledy-piggledy, if you know that expression, in relation to what students are doing for assessments. We don't want to have 10 posters, for example, for one program. So it's really a challenge in terms of managing that diversity, but that's the way that we try and do it. So what? Well, some of the challenges that we face in relation to this diversity are on the slide here. This isn't the easy option for staff. I mean, some of the easiest types of assessments wouldn't be some of these unusual assessments, but staff tend to be very supportive. I mentioned before, students become very anxious if they're asked to do things they haven't done before, so we really try and support that anxiety by building this scaffolding and some formative work. When you have formative exercises, of course, the students value the feedback that they get on that, and that takes some time, so we've really tried to work with ways of doing formative work that doesn't require an awful lot of marking. Our honors courses are really short. They run in 6-week blocks, sequentially in a term, and so there's not a lot of feedback opportunities for incorporating feedback in a timely way when you have these short courses. It's difficult because, of course, as courses evolve and modules evolve, things change, and it's a challenge to manage that change in the context of diversity of assessments. And I mentioned earlier that students are taking options across the suite of courses we offer, and so it's really important for us to try and keep a handle on what students are getting in relation to the diversity of the assessments when they're choosing their optional courses. Gen AI and the impacts of that on assessments is really becoming a challenge for us because some of the assessments that we really enjoy are very vulnerable to Gen AI, and we're just really trying to grapple with that now. Some of my colleagues have reverted back to invigilated exams as an easier way to be confident that we have integrity with our assessments, but we're really trying to be a bit more creative to figure out how we can continue to offer these types of assessments in a way that we can encourage ethical use of Gen I, but be confident we've got academic integrity. As I mentioned earlier, our students really value the diversity of the assessments that they're getting. It's something that they tell us repeatedly. And as I mentioned, I think it gives a chance for all different types of students to find something that they can be really good at. And that sort of instills confidence in students, and it also is something that they bring to interviews when they graduate. They tell us that they incorporate this into their portfolios. So really, these are the main things that I wanted to leave you with. I think having a diversity of assessments is just one part of what we try and do with our assessment portfolio, but it's an important part, especially in the honors programs. And students or staff are mostly very supportive, but there are some real challenges in terms of implementation. Thank you.